different ways. And the reason why I recommend this opening to most of my students, I don't play this very often, but the reason why I recommend to play this opening, because by playing this opening, it's not necessarily you're going to get better positions if black plays correct all the way. You're not necessarily going to get better position than in any other opening. But what is important here, that you're going to learn a lot about the strategy of blockading, of weak squares, and by playing opening and learning opening, you learn a lot about the game of chess. Well, now let me show you this. Bishop c5. There's another variation. Bishop e3, bishop takes d4. Those are best moves for white. And I don't want to stop and analyzing why this move, why that move, because we're not analyzing the opening. Castle, bishop takes c6, pawn takes c6, knight c3, bishop f5, knight takes e4, bishop takes e4, and castle. Now, we got similar type of position. But let me tell you difference. This is also blockade. All the same aspects of strategy apply. Well, it's not good for black to take the c2 pawn, because after rook c1 and rook takes c6, all black pawns are weak. So we are not going to make deliberately bad moves for black. But let's suppose black plays queen d7. Now the pawn is hanging. We will go c3. Black will go, I don't know, maybe rook e8. How do we play this position? We have control on c5 square. What we don't have, and we had in the other position, that we had pawns off the board and bishop on c5, which gives us great chances to attack on king side. This is different type of position. How do we play? Now, we have to make our bishop better than black's bishop, which means we have to create outpost for our bishop without giving black bishop an outpost. For example, I would say mistake here to go f4. It's a serious positional mistake. The reason why, because now black's bishop has permanent outpost on e4, and it's going to be very difficult for us to go f5. So it's very difficult for white to make a progress. Correct way to play. We will go f3. Bishop will move to g6. Now we could go rook d1. Make sure your opponent doesn't go c5. And if you take on e5. So what we do, I want to play here rook d1. And here is my plan. Eventually, I want to put my bishop on f2, rook on e1, and make sure, you see, this is slow developing position. Now what you're going to do is slowly take all this space on the board, control completely whole board. You're going to put double rooks on e file. You make sure black will never play c5. You can even go b4 and a3 to totally blockade everything. Where do you have to win this game? You have to win it on the king side. The way to do it, after you totally blockaded black's c pawn, now you're going to go g4. You see, you're gonna go g4, but black's g pawn, white's g pawn, will not go any farther than that. Then you're gonna go king g2. Well, I assume black by then puts the rooks on e file, and then you're gonna go either bishop h4 or put the bishop on g3 and try to go h4 h5. Do not provide for black's light square bishop any outpost. That means do not play f4 and let bishop go to e4. So we played g4 and f3, accordingly controlling f5 and e4 squares, which will totally disable this bishop. Now c2 and b1 squares, there is nothing happening on queen side that it will be imperative for bishop to stay on g6. And eventually you want to prepare h4 h5, and that will give you big chances to win. For example, you can go bishop h4. Here is the way to win this particular position. Well, I just told you do not play f4. Okay, now I'm going to violate the same rule. Because the reason I'm going to violate this rule, because it's concrete reason. I'm going to go bishop h4, force black to go rook e6, and now I'm going to go f4 with the idea of going f5, because bishop e4 doesn't work, because rook takes e4 and queen is hanging. So as an idea, I will tell you do not play f4. But when opportunity is right, everything I said can be reversed. Anything I said can be reversed. But as a general plan, you put bishop pawns on f3, g4, put your pieces in the best position, and ready for action, you're going to go h4 and create strong attack against your opponent's king. So you see now, white is totally dominating in the center. Black does not have any outposts. Now, the other way this position may be played is queen can be put on f4 or d2. Bishop can be put on f2 and c5. This way, when rook goes to e6, we're going to come back with the queen on d4. So you can put bishop on c5, you can put bishop on g3. They are both very good ideas. And eventually you're going to go h4, h5 or f4, f5 without giving e4 squares for black. This is how you take advantage of this very delicate position where you have weaknesses. Weaknesses on d4 and c5. They don't necessarily mean that you're going to penetrate there with your king, which is possible in some cases. You know, for example, in this position. How do you win this position? A lot of times I had this question asked. Here is the typical position that may come out from this opening. Typical. How do you win this position? Well, here, the same weaknesses of dark squares can be taken advantage of because you're just going to win all these pawns. How do you win all these pawns? And here, how do you win? Assuming you can get this position, how is this position winning? Well, that's what we're going to accomplish. Our king on d4, opponent's king on d6. But now, where are we going from here? What is the plan to win? You are not going to play c4 here or try to win on a queen side. You win on the queen side by playing on the king side. The way you do it, you go g4. Well, assuming black's bishop is on f7, because bishop on c8 stands very badly. Now, any pawn endgame. Well, we have here dominating knight, and very poor bishop. Question: do we exchange knight for bishop? On one hand, you can say, well, that's a big mistake because the knight is much better than the bishop. Why should we exchange? Well, this sounds very logical, but knight takes bishop is instantly winning move. We have to learn one thing. There are the good knight against bad bishop. Why the knight? Why it's so important to know all the advantages of it, because at some point you can exchange this knight, this strong piece for weak piece, to redeem for material advantage. It's like now, by taking the bishop, white simply wins because white goes king c5. Eventually both sides ran out of moves with pawns. King has to move, and white takes all black's pawns on the queen side. Well, but suppose this is not possible and bishop is on f7. How do we win this position? This position we win very simply. We will push our pawns. Suppose black goes like this and black is waiting. Now, what we do here? There are several ways actually to win in this position. You can go knight check, and after king moves, you can go king c5, and then come back with knight on a5, and just take all black's pawns. The other way to win is to create pass pawn. And now you can bring your knight to a strong position on f4, go f6, and then you can bring the knight to d3 and e5 and push f7. Eventually, what is going to happen, black's king has to go to stop the pawn, and then you penetrate with a king and taking all the pawns on the queen side. Well, this is the easiest, this is the best position white can get if they can exchange all pieces and get knight versus bishop in this type of pawn structure, and have dominating knight against bad bishop. Actually, this is going to be this kind of great help for people who play Scotch Gambit, the opening it comes out of, but it also should be very instructive for every chess player to see how do you take advantage of weak squares in general. So the main aspects are create a play to make sure that this blockading weak dark squares you will benefit from. That goes from the middle game positions we just looked, where we had queen and two rooks and opposite color bishops. And opposite color bishops, as you just saw, doesn't always mean that position is simple and drawish. This position is big advantage for white, and this position is big advantage for white. So what seems to be a very simple and quiet position, in fact, is very bad position for black. And a lot of people, when they play, I've seen it when I've played some games, some people having this kind of a bad position for black would offer me a draw here with black. And not because they are rude, no, not at all, because they think it's drawish position and it's equal. And only much later in a game, close to the end of the game or after the game, they realize, yes, the position was bad. Well, so before you get in there, for white or for black, you should know. For black, you try to stay away from this kind of positions. And for white, once you get this position, you would know how to capitalize